Here's your friendly reminder. It's been a year with Trump in office, and somehow we're still all miraculously here. Today we're discussing all things State of the Union and the general reaction to some of the things he said in his first State of the Union address. All that and more right here on the T. Grab a cup and let's spill the tea. Your unabridged connection to mainstream news here on WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's, as always, Jon Dowding, your host of The T on WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. And there's been a lot going on politically. There's a lot of craziness going on. And what better way to remember all of it than Trump's first State of the Union? And a reminder, it's been a year. Don't worry, everybody. So I just kind of wanted to do a short kind of roundup, summary, evaluation, analysis of what he said, what makes sense, why I'm confused with certain things, people's reactions, info, that kind of thing. So we get a good overview and a good idea of what is going on and what really is going on in the State of the Union. Just some general info about the speech. It was 80 minutes long. It was one of the longest because of really all the clapping early on, but I'll get into that later. Trump, unlike what he normally did in a lot of his campaign addresses at his different campaign stops and when he addressed crowds, read right off the prompter. And he acted what people were saying presidential enough. And Melania showed up, however, alone and wearing white, which again, I will get into that later. A lot of Democrats wore black, if not all of them, for their support of #MeToo and people who are victims of sexual assault and sexual misconduct. And much of the speech was devoted to detailing the inspiration and trying personal stories of his official guests. And this included Ji Seong-ho, a North Korean defector who faced multiple amputations before fleeing his country for Seoul, where he now helps other defectors. Those are the basic information. That's the basics of what's going on. Now, I want to kind of get into some of the topics he discussed. Early on, he highlighted economics because it's a great way for you to maintain your high numbers. He talked about how black unemployment rates were at an all-time low. The new tax reform measure also is something that he bragged about its passing and how they were able to do one of the largest tax overhauls in decades. He also emphasized how the nation is and needs to be united in order to be a, quote, one team, one people, and one American family. Trump also took a stab at the NFL protest of the national anthem that created a rousing round of applause and chanting of USA, USA from Republicans in the chamber. Something I want to talk about. My issues, personally, with the speech. One, I will say, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he did a very good job. He was very presidential. He was very professional. One of the things, though, it sounded kind of hypocritical. He encouraged bipartisanship, yet outside of the State of the Union always castigates the Democrats, always tries to not work with them, always tries to get a way around negotiating and dealing with them. Also, he paved a path for citizenship for dreamers, saying something could be created to create a first, initially he said a 10-year path to citizenship. Now he said a 12-year path to citizenship. As I mentioned in my last episode, how do conservatives feel about this? The issue with why the government shut down was because of dreamers and not being able to figure something out yet. And as of now, there still is no legislation and no real talks going on about how we are going to deal with dreamers. The question being brought up now is, 1, what does his conservative base feel about that? 2, what do his conservative counterparts in Congress feel about that? And 3, does he really want to stand by his remarks of creating a path of citizenship for dreamers? Is that something he really wants to get done? Also, going back to what I was talking about before, his first State of the Union was such a long one because in the beginning, everybody was clapping the whole time. I felt like it was church. Everybody was stand up, sit down, clap, stand up, sit down, pray, chant God, all this kind of talk. It felt like church. I was forcing myself to watch it because I love political stuff. I'm a political junkie, honestly, and I was thriving, but at the same time, it was wasting a lot of time by just getting praise. Hello? You didn't do that much in the last year besides pass one tax reform. What happened to the whole Obamacare repeal? But I digress. Now moving on to the reaction, the public reaction and the Democratic response. So most of the beginning, like I said, was for clapping for various people. Now, that's what a lot of people were talking about. Also, a lot of people were talking about how Melania came alone. when most presidents and first ladies come together. There's been rumors and speculation behind closed doors that they are facing some issues in their marriage, which obviously is not for public discussion. Nevertheless, there could be some issues. Now, something else. Democrats would not stand up for certain things he was talking about, obviously because they didn't believe in that. Let's get real. When Obama did any one of his State of the Unions, my favorite one that I remember is when Obama said something along the lines of that he will not be running again for president, and Republicans stood up and started cheering. And then he came back quick with, because I already won twice. And then they sat down and the Democrats stood up. Again, that was Obama being slick, and this is why I miss Barack. But anyway, Donald Trump now, after the State of the Union, said the Democrats who didn't stand up for him were treasonous. Can we call them that? Yeah, we'll call them that. Treasonous. They were treasonous, really, because they didn't agree with what you said. They're treasonous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, when he says things like this, it almost sounds tyrannical. And it's the response that tyrant would say. They're not listening to me. They don't agree with me. They're treasonous. They don't love this country, this, that, and the third. Okay, they don't agree with you, and you say they're treasonous because they have different ideological standpoints than you do. It's not treason. That's freedom of expression, and that's people's own thought processes, or thought processes, however you want to pronounce it. Regardless, at the end of the day, I think the speech was okay. I think a lot of the speech was theatrical, and it really wasn't content heavy. And so to the Democratic response, which was given by Joe Kennedy III, obviously, who's part of the Kennedy dynasty. So it surprisingly was a very good rebuttal. It was a very good point of talking about the divisiveness that Trump had in his speech and how we do need to come together and we do need to actually unite, because we're not. We're putting certain people on pedestals and we're putting certain people in the spotlight that we want to so we look good, but we're not helping everybody else. And that's a really big issue. Again, it's crazy to think that it's been a year, but we're still here. Somehow, miraculously, I don't know how, but we are still here. We're going to see if Trump really wants to stand by some of the things he said in the State of the Union, particularly about the Dreamers. So stay tuned to that, but as always, stay tuned to my podcast, The T, here on WHIP Radio, Philly's #1 college radio station. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will be back next week to discuss all things politics and break down all the political news. Thanks as always. I'm Jon Dowding. I'll see you guys later.